changing the littlest things with calisthenics makes the biggest difference. And I feel like after working with so many people, that's like the #1 thing that is challenging when working with people is how do I make it a point to you that the simplest things are gonna make it harder or easier. It's like if I tell you to do push-ups, I have no clue how you're doing the push-up, what it looks like, because if you, like we just said, I mean, if you do your push-ups, full push-ups, I know you're getting something out of that. But if you're just
or one side comes up more,
anything defeating the purpose of that movement or changing the purpose of that movement, they're like, oh, I can rep out 50 push-ups. I'm like, how are you doing the push-ups? Because I can't do 50 real push-ups. But yeah, obviously this exercise, simply adding in the stability element changes everything. And then keeping a good lean, good lockout. And for not doing it in a while, bro, you're kind of killing it.
I think you think you hit normally and then you do this and you're like,
yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Are you talking about going from bodybuilding to calisthenics? Yeah. This is the #1 thing you'll notice whenever you first start doing calisthenics, especially coming from weightlifting, is you'll be sore in areas you did not know you could get sore in. And that's strictly because of variety of movement, and like you said, the accessory muscle groups and the stabilizing muscle groups within the movement. What was the exercise we used to do? Okay.
Just because it's less, you're more on the ground, but it's...
How to make your push-ups harder, step 1. So that's what I was thinking of though. I'm gonna come up with an exercise for go down from a push-up, planche push-up position. When you get down, come out and almost start your press, and then just let your feet go down as you press up to, because I'm not full planching, right? Push position. So try to time your feet coming off the ground with actually going past parallel. Back down, it's okay.
Yeah, that's
it's tough to watch the video back to see where the timing's at.
Whenever your heart is broken, don't ever forget you're golden. I will find the light in your soul, I'll be there. Never leaving you in the darkness, even when you're out of focus. I will be the light in your life, you'll see.
So that's the interesting thing about the 90 press is there's a lot of range of motion you can go through. The biggest thing I've realized is like, you know, when you just look at a handstand push-up, you start here.
Right.
As you get more advanced, you know, you start to lower your angle to where, and a lot of times really what you're doing is this, swooping.
Yeah.
But when you get advanced, like when you start to go into a 90 press, it becomes about going from here, how low can you go? Because I'm not here, I'm not parallel to pressing, but I'm like still swooped.
Yeah.
So it's about lowering your angle, and then, you know, when you get really good, it's about deepening your angle. So that's one of the things, obviously, with calisthenics, making progress is changing, you know, the angle or the range of motion. And like that's what we're doing throughout that whole, is increasing that. Every range of motion increase is 5-10 pounds heavy, you know what I mean, of resistance.
100%.
You just don't even realize them. Also, like, that's kind of exactly what I was talking about though. If you were serious about getting it, you know, in the quickest amount of time possible, the key isn't sitting there kicking up.
Right.
It's actually regressing back a step and going back to the wall and pulling off, because you need to feel the balance again in your hand and gain that control back. As soon as you, that's what's gonna pick up. And if you do 3 or 4 sets of some good time under tension of actually catching for 3 to 5 seconds, then falling back into the wall, pulling off, redoing that process, you know, that's where your growth's actually gonna happen. But when you get up and in the position with your handstand, it's actually about like really pressing into the ground is where you're gonna start to feel your balance. Because your hands, it's your palms and your fingertips. And it's rocking back and forth with those like micro corrections. When you get up and you start to hold a handstand, you gotta be able to actually control it within your palms and fingertips. Why? That's the difference between catching, holding, and stabilizing versus walking everywhere and moving around and never being able to actually like statically hold. Like that's the difference though, is I'm so pressed into the ground, and over time you develop this connection where you do get into that sweet spot and you don't have to move so much. But when you fall out of that sweet spot, it's just about pressing through those palms and fingers. Yeah, high. I do feel like the most beneficial part of this exercise, for me at least, is getting into proper protraction form though. Like, cause the biggest thing I struggle in a planche is maintaining this position. And like, I always drop and fall into retraction. So like learning to stay, not even overly protracted either, but the proper amount and the positioning of the press. Like, when I do this on flat ground, I never press straight up. It's like too difficult, and it's because I don't have the strength through the range of motion. Too, like, you know, bicep really getting worked, and also just able to work through a better range of motion, stabilize better, but towards the end I can feel my form breaking down. Like I feel like I have more control in this movement and understanding of where I'm at mechanically. The hardest part about calisthenics sometimes too is like you don't really know where you're at unless you have such a good mind muscle connection. You think you're doing a push-up right, you're not. Like you're not activating to the best of your ability. Right. And you wouldn't know unless you've done it. Like repetitions.
Well, having somebody who knows what they're doing, kind of like, okay, move your elbow this way. Like
100%. Making those tweaks for you.
Yep. That outside looking in.
I think the best thing you can do for yourself if you don't have a coach or you can't afford a coach or you just don't want to, or whatever the case is, get a gym partner. Get a second pair of eyes, like you said. I think the number one reason why you and I had success wasn't because I was like such a great coach or anything like that at the time, but it was having each other to like correct, notice those little things.
Leaving you alone is the hardest. Even when you're out of focus, I will be the light in your life. You'll see clear. I'll be your inspiration, 'cause I know that you'll do just what you're told. I'll be your harder temptation, 'cause I know that you'll make it on your own. I'll be your inspiration, 'cause I know that you'll do just what you're told.
Planche leans would technically be your first.
Right. But for like an intermediate type.
I like to think that tuck planche is a beginner skill, but it's one of the harder beginner skills. It takes a lot more time. It takes understanding and it takes movement patterns to get to the point of even holding a tuck planche.
Right.
And the crazy thing is I can hold a tuck planche pretty well. The weirdest part about a tuck planche that once again just doesn't get explained a lot of times is the difference between, so here's like a tuck planche and here's like a more leaned forward and more hip pickup tuck planche. Both of those are the same movement, but completely different, harder movements. So why is that important? Because when you go from a tuck planche to an advanced tuck planche to maybe even like it matters, hip placement matters, keeping that protraction matters, like, and that's all learned from actually working through that full range of motion of the tuck planche first. Yeah, and see, that's the biggest thing when I've shown Kevin, I've worked with a few other people in person. When I first go to teach them, that's your first step. Like I try to tell people, don't pick up your hips, just hold, because a lot of people, what they do when they first do the tuck planche, they actually try to pick up their hips the whole entire time, so they're never really getting good time under tension. Yes, they're losing all the movement. Best tips I've ever learned about a basic push-up. Turn your hands slightly outward. When you get into push-up position, get into a full position and squeeze your armpits together. If your armpits are squeezed together in the movement, your elbows can't flare out. Yeah, it's impossible. So you never have to think or worry about anything. You just...
So, turn.
Yep, squeeze your armpits.
Squeeze.
It's impossible to keep your armpits squeezed and let your elbows flare out. So you never have to worry about it. That's not nice. and then obviously, like, the only thing you really got to worry about is maybe like butt positioning. Right. So like obviously you don't want to be here and you don't want to be like here. But As long as you maintain a neutral spine, perfect push-up.
Temptation, 'cause I know that you'll make it on your own.